In today's FHIR and FHIR, we're going to have a look at the letter X, and so we're going to cover off XML and XML formats within the FHIR framework. And so when I'm working with FHIR, I normally utilize JSON as the format that I either write data into or retrieve data from, but you can certainly use XML. So this session, we're just going to cover off some of the differences between the XML format that we get and the JSON format. It's quite a bit different in the way that resources will appear. I tried to talk to someone that was expecting to see XML, and we weren't doing it correctly because we were using what we thought the right format was going to be. So hopefully this will make things a little clearer for you, and if you're using XML, you can go through the examples used in this particular video. So if we're dealing with XML in the FHIR context, we can certainly look at the link there through to the XML page within the FHIR specification, just to understand how to deal with XML payloads, whether you're searching for data in an XML way, or we're trying to persist data to a FHIR server using XML. Certainly that page will very, very much help you. A FHIR server can support JSON and XML formats, but it's defined within the capability statement, so it doesn't need to. It only needs to support one content type or format, but many support both JSON and XML. And so just have a look at the capability statement in your FHIR server to see what it supports. From a MIME type, so if we're setting the content type or the accept headers in our payload, then we'll certainly set that to be application/FHIR plus XML, which tells it that it's an XML format. We can also query the FHIR server with an underscore format parameter to tell it what type of format we want to get back. So if it accepts, say, both JSON and XML, and you want to say just make sure that we send back XML, you can put in the full MIME type, or you can put in application/XML or just straight XML, and you'll get an XML response coming back from the FHIR server. Depending on the FHIR server implementation, the default may be JSON or it might be XML. So it's probably best just to put the format in that you're expecting to get back. With the FHIR server itself, with the FHIR specification itself, there is an XSD or a schema that comes along with the FHIR spec that'll have the full schema for your XML documents that you can use to validate against, and a schematron for that purpose as well. So if we look at the differences between the JSON representation on the left and the XML representation on the right, besides the usual XML differences, the other thing that we'll note is that the primitive data types, so when we look at those primitives, and we covered them really early on in this series around dates and date times, there was a lot of primitives used there. So the dates, date fields, time fields, strings, integers, etc., are all primitive types, and they're contained within a value attribute. So the value will be there for each of those fields. So as an example, the use on the left in JSON is just use set to usual, but in an XML context, we see use with an attribute called value, and that value's then been assigned the value of usual. Then what we see is that the type is an object, and it's a coding type. We can see that, and the coding type is an array. We've only got one item in our array, and we see the coding elements embedded into that type object. What we will also see is that only values that are populated with a value, so only fields populated with a value are available or shown inside the XML. So if we didn't have, let's say, display for the coding, then, or text for the coding, we'd just see the attributes that we've got there, or the values that we've got there around system and code in those elements. And again, you'll see that even though we've got this complex data type of coding that's got the various elements, we can see those primitive data types for the URL and the string as well. So depending on which format you're using, either XML or JSON, you can interact with your FHIR server if it's capable of handling both. And just beware of the differences between the way that you may be used to dealing with an XML representation and the FHIR's implementation of XML. So utilizing that attribute for those primitives and then creating those complex objects as elements, but still using those primitives as attributes. The Dedalus DC4H FHIR server supports both JSON and XML payloads. So really it's up to the developers in how they want to interact with the FHIR server component, so providing that flexibility. If you do want to know some more about DC4H and how it can help in your interoperability challenges, please contact me at Dedalus or any of the Dedalus crew, and we can take you through DC4H and its capabilities.